Hello, high schoolers. This is Skill Builder 10, and this week you'll need your sight reading book and your copy of the blank fingering charts that I handed out in class. So go ahead and take out that sight reading book and open up to number 13. So this is the exercise that we will be looking at all next week starting on day 1. So make sure that you have learned your part, that you can come to class and play your part with confidence. And obviously you might have a few questions here or there, but I do expect you to put in some time to learn your part for number 13. And it's only a couple of lines of music, so it shouldn't be too much to ask to do that for this week. But then we're also going to do a little exercise with number 13 that's going to help us look at our finger patterns and where we place our fingers in relation to each other. It's a little bit of a different way of looking at playing that might be helpful to some of you. And we have done this before, but it was a couple of years ago, so this might be familiar to some of you and totally new to others. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching your Skill Builder. I'm here in my kitchen because we are going to play a game this week called What's in Miss Allen's Fridge? You all have until the next day 1, that means by 11:59 p.m. on day 6, to send me an email with a guess of 5 things that are in my refrigerator. Whoever guesses the most things correct will win a prize. So make sure you email me your guesses before the next day 1. And let's get back to the Skill Builder. So what we need to do to start is take a look at the key signatures that we have throughout number 13. So right off the bat, at the beginning of number 13, you might be looking for the key signature and think that maybe they forgot to write it. But this is a key signature where everything is natural. And so you're not going to see anything. There aren't any sharps or flats indicated in the key signature. Everything is natural. We call this the key of C major. And so as you play through number 13, every note that you play will be the natural form of that note. All of your C's are natural, all of your F's are natural, every note is natural. But then at measure 18, the key signature changes. Now we have 1 sharp in the key signature. And as a high schooler, you should know that anytime you see 1 sharp in the key signature, that is an F sharp. And this is called the key of G major. Okay, so these are the 2 key signatures we'll be working with this week, G major and C major. And go ahead and take out that blank fingering chart. This is a copy designed actually to cut in half and give to 2 different students. So you can cross out the name portion on the right, but I do want you to write your name on the left so that way when you hand it in, I can see that you did the work. And go ahead and write our 2 key names. So the first key is the key of C major. We are going to do that together. And then the key on the right is the key of G major. And you're going to do that on your own. Now, like I said, we've done these before, and so for some of you, using these fingering charts might be really easy, but I want to quickly go over how these work, and then we actually will break off and do this by section. So you'll be able to scroll to the part in the video that applies to your instrument, and that way you don't have to watch through everybody's. But just taking a look at this chart and how this works, the vertical lines each indicate a string, and so you all have 4 strings on your instrument, and we can fill in these boxes which string it is and the order of strings for your instrument. Just for an example right now, I'm going to say that this string is A. Now that is only true for two instruments, for viola and cello, but go with me even if you play violin or bass. This vertical line all the way down is your A string. The horizontal lines, as they cross each string, are the places you would put your fingers, and they each indicate 1 half step. So a half step is the distance from one note to the very next note. So in the case of A, the very next note after A, after you play open A, which is right here, if you had nothing, would be right here, and this would be the note B flat. That's the very next note after A. So you can think on your instrument, when we play B flat, that's a low 1. So if you marked that you were going to put your finger on this spot, that would be marking that you're playing a low 1. If you marked here, this is 1 half step higher than B flat, that's the note B. And so this is like the home base for our instruments. That's where your first finger normally goes. And in most cases, we will start in that spot with our first note on each string, although depending on the key signature, we may not. And so we're going to work through each string and write down just the fingerings that we need for the key we're in. And so, for example, in the key of C major, we know every note is natural. So we wouldn't need this B flat because that's not part of the key signature. We would just keep the B because that's the note that fits with the key signature. And as we go through this, I think it'll start to make some more sense to you. But before we break off into instruments, you might be asking why we're doing this. Like, you know how to play your notes, so why are we looking at things in a different way? And I can tell you that when I was growing up and learning an instrument, I just learned how to play each individual note. I never talked about how they relate to one another, and so I would be reading through my music, and for each note, just think about, okay, how do I play this and where does my finger go? But when I got to college and learned some other ways of teaching strings, we talked about this idea of finger patterns and thinking about each string and how they relate to one another. And it really made a lot of sense to me, and it's something that I wish I knew growing up and learning my instrument. So for some of you, this might make a lot of sense and really help you. For others, you might find this boring and tedious and monotonous, and that's okay. I want you to know how to do it. We won't do it every week, but every once in a while we will practice this. And so just work with me here, even if maybe it's not your favorite thing in the world. And of course, I'll probably have some sort of treat for you if you do your homework here, okay? So here's what we're going to do. I will write the name of the instrument that I am working on maybe up here in red. Let me make it nice and big so that you can see it really well. So I'll start with violin. And as soon as I'm done with violin, I will erase that and write viola. So violas, you can just scroll until it says viola, all right? And we'll kind of work that way through the video so you can, starting now, scroll to your instrument to look at your part. So we're going to start right here with violins. So violins, let's go through and label our string names. Hopefully this is really easy for you. Our lowest string on the left is G, D, A, and E. Very good. Okay. So we're in the key of C major. Every note is going to be natural. So let's start over here on the left with the G string. Okay. Now, if I put my finger here in the first spot, that would be an A flat. Does A flat fit in the key signature of C major? No, it does not, because it's a flat note, not a natural note. So we need to go up one more half step to this spot right here. This is the note A. So on the G string, you have a regular first finger. Okay, what would be the next note after that? Well, if I put my finger here, that would be a B flat. And again, B flat doesn't fit with our key signature. So I'm going to want to go up one more half step here to the note B. Okay, so we have a regular first finger and a high second finger. Next, the next note after B is C. Does C fit with the key signature of C major? Yes, it does. So now we're going to have C right there. So you can see your finger pattern on the G string is what we would call a 2-3 finger pattern because your second and third fingers are close together. All right, let's move over to the D string. We kind of already talked about this over on G, but a low 1 on the D string is E flat. So we don't want that. We want to go up to a regular first finger to play the note E. So again, a regular first finger on the D string. One half step higher than E is an F, and one half step higher than F is an F sharp. Which one of those fits into the key of C major? Hopefully you're realizing it's just the F, F natural. And so we're going to have a low second finger on the D string. I just said that a half step higher than F is F sharp. We don't want that note. Up here next to our C on the G string though, 3 fingers on D is the note G. And so you can see that the finger pattern on the D string is different than the finger pattern on the G string. Our first fingers and our third fingers are in the same spot. That's really important to know. But that second finger has moved from a B natural high 2 on the G string to an F natural low 2 on the D string. All right, so this is what we would call the 1-2 pattern. Let's move to the A string. That low 1 would be a B flat. We don't want that. We want a B natural, a regular first finger. So far on every string, our first finger has been in the same spot. Moving on to the next note, hopefully you're realizing right away, and this is super easy for you, that we will have another low 2 on the A string to make the note C natural. The next half step higher would be C sharp. We don't want that note. We want to come up here and put our third finger here. Oh, I was writing 3. That's not the right thing. For a high D. All right. So now looking at all 3 strings together so far, the first fingers and the third fingers have stayed in the same spot the whole time. The only finger that has changed is your second finger. On the G string, it's a high 2 with that 2-3 pattern. And then the D and the A string have the same finger pattern as each other, that 1-2 finger pattern. Now let's move to the E string. This is going to shake some things up a little bit because you can actually see it over here on the D string. 1 half step higher than E is an F, and F is the note we're looking for. So that means that your first finger on the E string is going to be low. And we have done this before in the key of C major, a low 1 on the E string for violins. That's one of those commonly missed notes. But when you want to move that first finger back, we actually call it playing in half position so that you can play that low 1 F natural. So I'll even write low 1 there to kind of help you remember that. 1 half step higher than F would be F sharp. We do not want that note. So you're actually going to stretch that second finger, and this is sort of the weird part. This is the low 2 spot, right? But because your first finger is lower than it normally would be, it feels like you're stretching. Okay, and so here's the note G, 2 fingers on the E string. And then finally, we don't want a G sharp, we want an A. All right, so if we look at this as a whole, our third finger is always in the same spot. Regardless of where the other fingers are, the third finger stays the same. This is for the key of C major, right? That second finger is a high 2 on the G string, but it's in the same spot for D, A, and E. And then the first finger is in the regular home base spot for G, D, and A, but it becomes a low 1 on the E string. All right. And hopefully looking at this, it might kind of help you get a visual representation of where those fingers will be when you're playing. All right. So now violins, you have some homework to do. I did the C major finger pattern. Now you need to do the G major finger pattern on your own. Of course, there's only going to be a few small changes. Remember, the key of G major has F sharps in it instead of the no sharps, no flats that we have in C major. So you should be able to pretty confidently go through and change this so that all of the notes stay the same, but the Fs become F sharps, and see how that affects your finger pattern. All right, so violins, thanks for sticking with me, watching through this. Make sure you get that other finger pattern done, and I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you in class. I'm going to erase this and move on to Team Viola. All right, hello violas. Hopefully you found this easily. Let me erase all of this stuff that I have for our violins, and we'll get going with your section of the video. There we go. All right, so Team Viola, let's go through and write your string names under the C major or above the C major fingering chart. So your lowest string is C, then G, then D, and A. Hopefully that is the easy part of the video for you. Now we're looking in the key of C major. Remember, this is the key that doesn't have any sharps or any flats. And so every note that we write on this fingering chart should be a natural note. So let's start right over here with the C string. A low 1 on the C string would be the note D flat. We do not want a D flat, so we'll do a regular first finger on the C string, which will make it a D or a D natural. 1 half step higher than a D natural would be an E flat. Again, we don't want an E flat because the key of C major is all natural, and so we should go up another half step. This would be the note E. This is what I often call a high 2. You have a space between your first and second finger. So that's the note E. Now let's think about this third finger. For our third finger, we have the choice to either do a regular 3 to make the note F or a high 3 to make the note F sharp. and hopefully you're catching on to this and it's becoming easy for you. We're going to make it a regular 3 to make it just the note F or F natural so that we are following the key signature. So looking at the C string in C major, we have what we call a 2-3 finger pattern because your second and third finger are close to one another. And we will kind of come back and look at that and see how it is in relation to the other strings as we move forward. So let's take a look at the G string. So a low 1 on G would be the note A flat, which we don't want. So we're going to have a regular first finger on the G, which will be the note A. So you can see already that the first fingers on the G and D strings will be the same as each other. All right, how about your second finger? A low 1, a low 2 would be the note B flat. We don't want a B flat, so we're going to have a high 2 for the note B, or B natural. And then that third finger will be right next to it to make the note C. So if you check out the C and G strings, they have the same finger pattern as one another, a 2-3 finger pattern. And so all of your fingers are in the same pattern. They're aligned. The second and third finger are touching the whole time that you're playing on C and G. Let's see if things change as we get to the D string. Now, just like the other two strings, we're not going to want a low 1 for D. We are going to want a regular first finger. That's going to give us the note E. Oh, I don't really like how that looks. Let me try that one more time. There we go, to give us the note E. Now we have a choice here for where to put our second finger. Think about what you would call low 2 and high 2 on the D string, and which one would you want to play for the key of C major. Hopefully you are realizing we want a low 2 here. This is an F natural. We do not want an F sharp high 2. We want a low 2 F natural. This spot right here, the high 2 spot would be an F sharp, and so we are going to put our third finger right here to make the note G. So now again, looking back at all three strings, our first finger is in the same spot for all three strings, as is our third finger. So those two fingers never change, but the second finger is moving. It's a high 2 for C and G, and it's a low 2 on the D string. We call this a 1-2 pattern. And then finally, let's take a look at the A string. We don't want a low 1 on A. We want a regular first finger here to make the note B. So our poor violins had to deal with a low 1 for this key signature, but violas, you don't have to. Your first finger is in the same spot on every string the whole time for the key of C major. Your second finger you're going to want as a low 2 to make the note C or C natural. Your high 2 would be a C sharp. And then finally, your third finger is going to play the note D. And so now that we're looking at all of our strings, you can see that there actually are only two different finger patterns you play in the key of C major. You play a 2-3 finger pattern on the C and G strings, and you play a 1-2 finger pattern on the D and A strings. And the only thing that changes as we go through those finger patterns is your second finger. Your first and your third finger stay in the same spot the whole time. And so even when you move that second finger back on the D and A strings, you still need to stretch that third finger up to the spot where it was before to keep it in the same place on every single string. All right, violas, you have some homework to do. Take a look over at the G major blank fingering pattern. You're going to take care of that on your own this week and bring it back to class next time. And remember, there's just one note different in the G major key signature. The Fs are sharp, and so all you need to do is take a look at this fingering pattern and change all of the Fs to F sharps. And so it will look a little bit different, but you should be able to use the C major pattern to help you with the G major pattern. Okay? I am going to let you go, violas. I hope you guys have a great day, and we're going to move on to cellos. All right, hello, cellos. I hope you found this easily. Let me just get rid of the stuff for viola, and we will get rolling with your part of the lesson. Cello and viola are actually pretty similar. I probably could have left some of that, but I'll go back from the beginning since you didn't see the other part of the video. So the first thing we're going to do, cellos, is we are going to go through and write your string names in the boxes. So Your lowest string is C, then G, then D, and finally A. Hopefully that is the easy part for you, just writing down your string names. With the key of C major, remember everything is natural. There are no sharps and no flats. And so as we go through this fingering chart, we are going to make sure that we put fingers down in places where the notes are natural, not the flat or sharp versions of the notes. And so with the C string, the low one on the C string would be a D flat. We don't want that. And so we're going to have a regular first finger on C to make the note D. Now, you could either put down a second or third finger. Think about which notes those make and which one fits within the key signature. Hopefully, you're realizing that I'm talking violin and viola terminology here, but for cellos, a second finger would be an E flat, and a third finger would be an E natural. And obviously, in this key, we want E natural. So we're going to have third finger down on the C string. And then finally, your fourth finger goes down right next to your third finger to make the note F. F natural is in this key signature. There's no sort of extension or anything. It's just 1, 3, and 4 on the C string. And that fits in our key signature of C major. Every note that we're playing is natural. So let's move to the G string. We'll see if anything is different. A low 1 on G would be an A flat. We don't want that. We want a regular first finger. So our first fingers between C and G are in the same spot. Our regular first finger here. We can either have B flat or B natural. Obviously, we want B natural. So we have another third finger and then a regular fourth finger for the note C. So as you look at the C and G strings, you can see your finger pattern is the same, 1, 3, 4. And this actually you probably could have figured out on your own to begin with because this is the C major scale, right? And so you've played this a lot. Let's move to the D string and see if there is anything different here. So we won't have a low 1 again because that would be E flat. So we want a regular first finger, E natural. Now think about your second or third finger note. Which one do you want here? In this case, we want a second finger because we want F natural, not F sharp. So now something has changed. We are using second finger instead of third finger. But our fourth finger is still staying in the same spot, no extension or anything here. It's regular 4 fingers to make the note G. And then finally on the A string, a low 1 would be B flat, which we do not want. So we have a regular first finger B. Now you didn't have to do any of the funky first finger stuff that my violins had to do. Your first finger stays in the same spot in the home base the whole time you play, which is a great thing for you. It makes it a little bit easier. On the A string, you have a low 2 C natural, and then that fourth finger stays in the same spot the whole time too. So you have a D, 4 fingers. So the first and fourth fingers stay in the same spot the whole time for you. There are no low 1s and no extensions. So this is why the key of C major is a pretty nice key for cello players. All right, so cello players, you now have the job of taking your C major fingering chart and using what you learned here to make the G major fingering chart. And the only difference between C major and G major is an F sharp. So hopefully it's not too hard to transfer over what you learned here and make the accurate G major fingering chart. All right, so cellos, thanks for sticking with me. I hope you guys have a great week, and I'm going to move on to bass. All right, bass players, last but not least. I hope you found this easily. Let me erase all of the stuff from the cello part of the lesson, and then we'll jump right into yours. There we go. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is write in your, there we go, your string name. So for bass, your lowest string is an E, then A, then D, and finally G, the exact opposite of violin strings. So what we're going to do is go through each string and figure out which fingers you're going to put down to play the notes in the key of C major. So let's start right off with the E string. And we talked about before that each one of these little horizontal lines represents 1/2 step. So when it comes to your first finger on the E string, you have a choice. You can either do a low 1 or a regular first finger. And in this case, the low 1 would be an F natural and the regular first finger would be an F sharp. Which one of those do we want for the key of C major? We want an F natural. So right off the bat, basses, you have kind of a funky note here because you have a low 1 from the very first string. So everyone else had got to do a regular first finger. So you had kind of a tough thing here to figure out at the beginning. So low 1 F natural on the E string. This is in what we would call half position. And so we're not going to put a regular first finger down, but if you had a finger in this spot, like if you put your 2 fingers down, that would be the note F sharp. And then 1/2 step higher than F sharp is the note G. So you're going to put a finger down here to make the note G. I would play this in half position, so it would be 1 and 4. And those are the 2 notes on the E string that fit in the key of C major. Then if we go over to the A string, you have an option of doing a low 1 or a regular first finger. Hopefully you can think and say, oh, a low 1 would be a B flat. That doesn't fit with the key of C major, so I want a regular first finger to make the note B. So you are in half position here, then you can, on the E string, you can move up to first position on the A string. Now you have the choice of either putting down your second finger or your fourth finger. Which one do you think will fit with the key of C major? The answer is your second finger to make the note C. Now, you can see that the G and the C are in the same spot, but since you were in a different position on the E string, your fourth finger will play this G in the same spot that your second finger will play this C. So it's a little bit different for bass, but hopefully you can still see the relationship there. Moving over to the D string, do we have a low 1 or a regular 1? And the answer is we have a regular first finger for the note E. And then do we have second finger or fourth finger? We'll have second finger for the note F natural. So again, all of these notes, the G, C, and F, are in the same spot. The A and the D string have the same exact fingering pattern. So first and second finger on the A and D string. And then finally on G, your first finger will not be a low 1. That would be an A flat. Your first finger will be a regular first finger to make the note A. And now we have to decide, is it going to be a second finger or a fourth finger? The second finger would play the note B flat, and the fourth finger would play the note B natural. And so this is the fingering that we want. We want to do 1, 4 on G. All right. So again, if you were to scroll back and look at the violin, viola, and cello fingering charts, they do look a little bit different because they have more fingers that they can use on each string. Bass, normally you're only getting 2 notes per position on every string. And so here are the notes available to you in C major. The E string is in half position. The A, D, and G strings are in first position, but it's a 1-2 pattern on A and D, and it's a 1-4 pattern on G. All right, so your job now is to take what you learned here and apply it to the other fingering chart to work out the key of G major. So now instead of everything being natural, you will have F sharps. And hopefully that is not too hard for you to figure out how to do it in G major. All right, so have a great day. Thanks for watching. If there's anyone who hung on here who's not a bass player, but you watched through the whole thing, I hope you all have a great day, and we'll see you guys in class.